Hello, guys. Welcome back to our podcast. I am Maddie.
And I am Anna Marie.
And we're back on Media Madness to talk about all things media. And today, Anna, what are we talking about?
So today we are talking about women's representation in media. From everything to women's body types, to the depth of the character, and overall just what they have going on in their mind.
Yeah.
Is there actually anything there when it comes to women's representation in media?
Oh, is there anything there?
Yeah.
No. There's
It's
nothing
all
going on.
Bye.
We're a little passionate about this topic. We actually go on and on and on talking about different movies and shows and representation and stuff like that, especially when it comes to like Anna's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm a girl.
Nice. Woo!
I know that didn't make sense. I lost my thought, but basically this is just something that we like to talk about a lot. So we have many examples to go over, and we kind of tried to break it down a little bit for you guys to understand better. We're kind of going to talk about what our idea is, what kind of our stance is. Then we're going to move on to segments. So we're going to talk about representation of women's bodies first.
Yes.
Then we'll move on to kind of their mind and ability, and then we'll talk about the redemption cycle and if that is actually working to improve women's representation or not. And then we'll kind of conclude with our thoughts on if we think it's working or not.
Okay.
Should we dive in?
Okay, so to start off today's podcast, we just wanted to overall define our theory when it comes to media's representation of women. We believe that there's not a fully accurate representation of women in media, mainly because either A, the characters aren't fully rounded enough to where they do go through stuff, but it just wouldn't make sense in like a real life situation, or it's they're only about their body and that's it. They're only thinking about how big they are or how small they are or anything like that. Or then when it comes to like the final girl trope in horror movies, it's almost in a sense where they have nothing but they're gonna fight till the end, or like there's no backstory to it really. We just strictly believe there has been claim to like redemption and stuff, but it's not enough to the point where it's getting rid of the stereotypes that Hollywood has made, basic tropes that Hollywood has put on their female characters. The redemption is there, but we need to do a lot more. So that's what our theory on it all is.
I think that media has tried a lot to improve, and we'll kind of like go over some different shows and movies that have made that attempt. But I feel like no matter how much they try, there's always some kind of thing that happens to where it's like, well, they tried this, but then they did this, and that kind of cancels each other out. Shows really good improvement, but I think that there really does need to be a bigger leap without making people feel patronized. I feel like that is like a huge aspect of what happens is people do it too much to where it's like recreating movies that don't need to be recreated, like the Ghostbusters
yeah,
movie
that's
that
what I was just
everyone
about to
hated.
say, that they made every single male lead a female lead,
Yeah,
and then made the one female lead that wasn't Ghostbusters by like just an over-sexualized man, basically.
Yeah.
So just going backwards.
pretty much. It feels like everyone's version of trying to reverse the stereotypes is just taking those stereotypes, cartoonizing them, and then throwing it on somebody else.
Yes.
And I feel like that's not exactly the way to go about it.
But
before we get in, we'll
Yes.
actually go to our points.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm getting a little into it already.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, anyways. Anna, start us off. Let's do this.
Yes. So the overall representation of women's bodies go back so far. When media first started, basically.
Definitely.
You had Marilyn Monroe being the sex symbol and all that stuff, but even people fat shaming her for her having curves. And I would say from Marilyn Monroe, it went to like the 80s and stuff, where there was still, it was definitely getting skinnier, but there was still some substance. It would be like women with bigger boobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when it came down to the 90s and 2000s, it got to such a bad stereotype of basically like heroin chic, I guess you could say.
Yes.
It just got to a point where there was no way bigger females would ever be able to be represented besides for just the funny fat friend trope, not getting leads or anything like that, just because they are bigger as characters. Basically, what made me think of all this was recently with The Whale. Even though Brendan Fraser is a male lead, it even came down to the point where media hasn't ever went in depth of a like overweight, an actual overweight person's story. Brendan Fraser played like a 300-pound man that went through so many things. He came out as gay like while he was married to a woman, and his wife at the time and their daughter like moved away. Like all this stuff happened. He went through a lot of emotional trauma. And that's what made him gain so much weight. Everything surrounding this movie was about how the fat suit was going to be made, because Brendan Fraser is not 300 pounds. He specifically said he didn't want a Shiloh Howell fat suit. He didn't want all these other fat suits that have been in media that is just like not accurate representations.
Yeah.
So he kind of did what like Jim Carrey did for The Grinch, and was like literally in the makeup chair for hours making sure that it was an accurate representation, because he didn't want to be in the movie unless it wasn't.
So he did more of like a full
full
body.
everything. It wasn't
Okay.
just like neck to ankles. It was like arms,
Okay.
gloves on the hand, like every single thing, prosthetics on the actual face. So basically what Brendan did was have the makeup artist and everyone put him into the suit to make sure that it actually fit the representation of a 300-pound man. And he did decide to do the movie from it, and it's been doing great, and he won an Oscar for it. Overall, it came to light, and I wanted to talk about the representation of it all. But I want to talk about women's side of it, because there has been a lot of representation in the past couple of years. It's been basically the I'm fat, and then something happens, and I turn skinny, and now I'm getting men looking at me, and all this stuff, and it's the same movie over and over by the same female comedian. Amy Schumer did it, and so did Rebel Wilson, and they were both, like, I'm pretty sure straight to Netflix movies. It's just always the same. I love this quote from AMA Journal of Ethics. This whole entire journal article is media's portrayal of people that are obese. I really was interested in just, like, digging down into why do we portray them that way versus like skinny characters. Why is there so much of a difference? Jay White said, rarely if ever they are romantic leads, successful lawyers or doctors, or action stars. Flipping through the numerous reality shows on television where women are battling for a modeling contract, there is often considerable negative discussion about one or two contestants that have extra weight, and therefore lacking what is perceived as a model's body, and only one plus-size model has ever won such contest. Basically, that quote just made me think a lot more about it. In the recent years, yes, there has been improvements, but there hasn't been a full lead. Or if it is a lead, it's a TV show.
Yep.
It's not a big blockbuster like the Marvel movies. There's never going to be a plus-sized Marvel character.
Yeah.
And people can say it comes with, well, athletics and all that stuff. There's plenty of athletic people that do, it's just genetics.
Yeah.
They can't
Really.
be a stick.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. I thought that quote was really interesting. Makes people realize a little bit more. Like, if they are a romantic lead, why do they have to jump through hoops? Why can't the attractive man or whoever fall in love with them?
Yeah.
I don't know why it has to be such a taboo topic.
I feel like it's been like a huge trend, especially in the 90s, which is not that long ago if you really think about it. I feel like in the 90s, it was like you're saying, every single movie was some woman was going through some kind of transformation. Society tried to like kind of make fun of it and flip it and whatever and go against that, and they made movies like Not Another Teen Movie and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it was just like making fun of the fact that every single movie is like that. But then you can't come out in like, what was it, 2016, and then The Duff came out.
Yeah.
And The Duff was all about, you know, the ugly fat friend. And like every group has to have one and whatever. And she even had to transform. And the whole purpose of the movie was supposed to be her loving herself for being the Duff.
Yeah.
But she still had to do it. And like it came out a bunch of expense jokes about her. That
when
like,
she wasn't even that big.
No, that's the whole thing. I think that's one big issue is our version of like fat on film is literally normal / skinny weight.
Mid-sized.
Mid-size in person.
And it's been like that for years.
Yes.
Because came out during the pandemic, one of these TikTokers, I can't remember their name right now, was talking about how she always thought that like Fran from Grease and like all these other characters were huge.
Yeah.
Because it's written in. Literally, Fran from Grease is seen as eating a candy bar and having milkshakes throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And she's probably only like 130 pounds.
No, literally.
But like bigger for the time, which is like, that's just insane. So then it came to a point where like our grandparents and our parents now are over obsessed about their bodies and stuff like that because media told them that those skinny people are fat in a sense.
I grew up watching a lot of like reality TV show like you were talking about, especially with that quote that you brought up, America's Next Top Model.
Yes.
I remember that was like my first ever huge introduction into like how society, especially in the fashion industry, which is obviously very different, how they see women's bodies and how we're supposed to behave. Like in America's Next Top Model, I think it's only ever had one winner that was technically plus size.
Yeah.
I remember that being a huge, huge scandal, and they would rip her to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It would literally be, she had like the best photos that week, and no matter what she did, it was still like, well, you kind of, you don't look quite the way we want you to. And you need to go work out at the gym for an hour more every single day so that you can get maybe a good photo at like everybody else. And all the other photos would be mediocre.
Yeah.
And it was simply because of her weight.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even big. She was probably smaller than I am.
Yeah. So we have some clips.
Yes.
That I wanted to show to you that kind of prove my point.
Yes.
The first clip is Shallow Hal, which that movie just in itself is so cancelable. How would you say it?
Cancelable?
So wrong.
Cancel that.
Yeah. Basically, just a really bad movie. Let's just say that.
Yeah, because isn't it, I think I watched it a long time ago. Isn't it you're kind of telling me about it. It was like the guy hits his head or something.
Yeah, gets a concussion.
Right. Falls in love with this woman.
But thinks that she's like Gwyneth Paltrow,
Yeah,
which is who
like,
plays it.
Tiny.
But tiny, small model. When in reality, she is like almost 400 pounds is what they're trying to say. The fat suit, terrible. One of the worst ones that I've probably ever seen in media.
Really?
Yeah. It's like just fluff. It looks like she's just like pillows.
Oh.
Yeah. It's embarrassing.
Oh, no.
And then like also like coming from Jack Black being a little bit bigger. Granted, at the time he
Yeah.
wasn't.
See, and I
He
think
went,
that,
yes, I'm doing this movie.
Yeah, I feel like that leads into a whole other conversation of like how men are supposed to view like men's bodies.
Yeah.
We can put that into another
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
But because today it's for the ladies.
Ladies
only. But yeah, that hypocritical as hell.
Okay, so basically I'm going to describe the clip really fast before we show it. They're eating lunch. They're having such a great time. She then orders a basic meal. They're trying to make it seem like she's eating pounds and pounds of food. I probably could eat that right now if I needed to. He's like looking at her like, damn, can't believe you can eat that much.
Oh, no.
Just like so rude, but that's okay. At the end of the scene, she breaks a chair.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're trying to make it, they're like, what is the chair made out of? And they're like, steel. You don't see her in the fat suit in this scene.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Thank God. You do see her skinny, falling. I mean, well, she is skinny, but like her falling, and everyone else around sees Gwyneth Paltrow in the fat suit, but he doesn't.
Okay.
So it's kind of, you get to see his point of view of it.
Yeah, I realized I haven't seen that movie in forever, and that was brutal to watch. First off, the comments about what people are eating, I don't appreciate that. I mean, you were right. Like, what she was ordering was not anything super crazy.
Yeah.
She wasn't ordering, like, a 4-course meal in one sitting.
Yeah.
It was literally whatever the hell a pizza burger is.
Pizza burger, fries,
Do your thing.
and a milkshake.
And they were acting like it was wild. And then the chair breaking and her just laying on the ground.
Yeah.
I can't. Here's my thing, too. I low-key think they were trying to make Gwyneth Paltrow look skinnier than she actually is.
Yes.
Because her shirt was so incredibly tight, it looked like it was pulling her arm, like, fat down. If you're mocking someone being fat, then that's, like, what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
Especially with the whole chair thing. But I feel like if it was supposed to be about, like, a, love the person, not the body kind of thing, which I feel like that's kind of what it was going for, regardless of if that message is a good message or not.
Yeah.
The tightening of the shirt and trying to make her look skinnier and as skinny as possible is not the way to go about that. Especially back then, I think, especially in fashion trends and things like that on media, back then it was like, if you can't fit into the low-waist jeans, then, like, you need to go to the gym, basically. And, like, or stop eating. And I think that was, like, heavily portrayed in movies. I think, like, Wasn't another one you were bringing up? We were talking about Friends and how they would
Yes,
make fun
and
of her.
Monica. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that show personally, but
Mm-hmm.
you
But
know,
it was every single time there was a flashback, it would be Monica in a fat suit.
yeah,
And there's a whole episode, I'm almost positive, where Chandler, when he was a kid, he was friends with Ross. He was basically like, oh, I could never be with your sister. She's huge.
right.
And like said it. And Monica's in the background. And she's like, it's affected me ever since. Monica, throughout the show, she has like OCD and like all this other stuff. Like she needs everything to be cleaned. She is always like proper. Like she does not let herself basically eat. Like you don't really see her eat that much on the show.
Yeah.
And I think you have to realize that. But the Friends directors in the end were just making fun of it. That's what it was. And I get 90s and you can't. But at the time, like you just said, the 90s wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. I think in the like long-term
Mhm.
scheme of things, it was not that long ago. I do think we've made a big jump into
Mhm.
where we've completely flipped,
Yes.
but I feel like because it was so fast, we still have so many of those leftover issues.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, another one we were going to talk about was
Mhm.
Insatiable.
Yes.
And I think that is a great example of how it's kind of the inverse-ish,
Mhm.
or not inverse, I guess it's kind of like a similar one to the clip we
Yes.
just watched.
Yeah.
But Sevy Ryan, and she basically is, she's bigger when she starts the movie.
And that's even worse of a fat suit. I think that's actually
Really?
probably one of the worst fat suits I've ever seen. Her arms aren't even like big. It's just Debbie
Oh,
Ryan's
right.
arms, and then just like looks like she's pregnant.
Yeah, because I remember they put like,
It's
wasn't there a
it's
weird
like
thing
one of
on her
those like
neck?
weird neck, like they think just because you're fat you have just a ginormous neck.
Yeah, I think I remember
Um,
seeing that, and I was like, what the hell's going
Yeah,
on?
and it's that and like a belly, and that's it.
Okay, cute.
And you're like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my thing is I think for me, I don't think I noticed it. Well, I noticed how horrendous
Mhm.
it was, but they don't show it a lot in
Yeah.
that show because,
Only the first couple scenes.
right, because then she gets punched in the face by a homeless person,
Mhm.
right? And then because she gets punched in the face, she's not able to eat real food for like 3
Mhm.
months, and she loses all of her weight,
Yeah.
right? Which I also think is a very not good representation of like women's bodies.
Yeah.
Because obviously like also when you're losing weight from going from like an obese size
Mhm.
to a mid-size or a
Mhm.
whatever plus size, you're gonna have extra skin, you're gonna have leftover things
Yes.
happening.
Mhm.
You're not gonna go from a size triple
Yeah.
XL whatever to a medium and not
And
have
just
any
not have anything.
repercussions,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I think for that show it shows her like going from that to being like skinny in a sense, how different her life is, how like
Mhm.
all of these hot guys want to talk to her now, and
Mhm.
she went through that transformation, and the show tries, I don't like the show in general, so I'm being a little biased,
Yeah.
but the show tries to show that it's like, you know, she
Different.
yeah, it's being different because even though she had her transformation, she's still a shitty person.
They tried to diagnose her with an eating disorder.
Yes.
Because there were at some points where she was eating a cake
Like
and
binge
all
eating
that,
it.
binge eating and all that stuff. And she's like, I just can't stop and I don't know what it is. And I think it was a whole episode, if I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. It's just crazy to see that there has been improvement. But the fact that no one can make a well-rounded plus-size character at this point
Mhm.
is insane.
Because it's only about you're either funny, you have an eating disorder,
Mm-hmm.
or you're a side character.
Yes.
And there's nothing more to it. There's no extra storylines, no like main character in
Yeah.
this. I think the only main character I've ever seen for a bigger person in the last 20 years was like Drop Dead Diva.
Yeah.
I think that show had a better message to it
Yes.
than
Yeah.
Insatiable, but I think they're pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Insatiable had such a repercussion in media
Yes.
because of how horribly they handled stuff. Because those bigger ones get more acknowledgement, I think that makes it a lot harder to
Mhm.
stop like the stereotypes and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
from continuing on, because like obviously you want to get as much media's exposure as possible.
Yeah.
So if people are going to laugh at the dumb fat joke, then
Mhm.
people are going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously adjusting from going to a drastically different like body
Yes.
size,
Yeah.
you have to like find new styles that work for you. You have to like
Mhm.
find all these like different places to shop for your body.
Yeah.
They didn't show any of that. It was literally like she shows up to school, now she's hot, now
Yeah.
she has cool clothes, her hair is constantly
Mhm.
curled, she has makeup on all the time.
Well, it's almost as if she had like the clothes in her closet, like all that
Mhm.
stuff. Like it just
Mhm.
it didn't make sense. It may seem that we're going in the right direction, but literally those two clips have been within the past 20, 21, 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not been that long.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, it's more the sense of fat people have been around for longer than 20 years.
Yeah.
There's always the stigma of, oh, you're representing obese people. That's not good for health-wise and stuff like that. But like I've said, it comes down to genetics. Not to do this, but like to bring in myself in it, I literally like went to the doctor like last year and did all these tests and everything just to make sure. And she said I'm one of the healthiest people that she has seen at the age of 21.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to it where you just have to relieve yourself of the stigma of, because I don't have a flat stomach, I'm not healthy.
Right.
And it takes so much time, and I'm thankful that TikTok is here now, because honestly, when it comes down to it, traditional media is not ever probably going to get to the point that it needs to.
No.
And that goes with like everything. That
Yeah.
also goes with LGBTQ representation.
Oh, don't even get me
That
started.
goes with all of that. Like, it's
Yeah.
just never going to be there because of the people that run traditional media.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, to social media and all this, we've had so many other people that have come up and have been able to make big strides, especially for plus size people. When it comes down to models, it's no longer you're skinny or you're plus sized. It's everyone.
Yep. There's big
Victoria's
range.
Secret has had to figure it out. American Eagle has had to figure it out. All these big companies have had to figure it out that you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
traditional media might be far behind, but we do have new media, and
Yeah.
I think that's great.
I think you're so right. I think when it comes to traditional media, it is going to stay that way because I think that focuses on glamorizing and things like that. But I think when it comes to our normal social media, like TikTok and Instagram and things like that, I think that kind of media, since it is more normal person to normal person, it brings a lot more of that relatability factor. And like, I don't see this, let's fill this hole. We'll get there eventually when it comes to new media, like you said. But traditional media, I think, will stay the same.
Rolling in to our next topic.
Yeah. All right, guys, listen.
Maddie, go crazy.
I'm gonna go crazy just for a second because listen, we let Anna take on the body section. I'm gonna talk about the ability and mind section because let me tell you, my hair is blonde for a reason. Everyone thinks girls are dumb as hell. Just kidding. No, people don't think that. But in movies, yeah, they do. So basically for my section, I'm going to kind of talk about, I love horror movies. Okay. I have about like 2 little examples that aren't horror movies, just to talk about like the setup on how movies portray women. Mostly we're going to be talking about how women in horror movies are represented and how that's kind of changed from like that final girl trope into the scream queen trope. I'll explain what that means. That is a really, really good breakdown of how media in general sees women from now and then from in the past. Because in those types of movies, it's very like simple and broken down because you're focused on like, ooh, scary. And there's not like a huge plot that's going around it like we're in these other movies where it's like focus on the love interest and you don't need to develop characters like that. But in horror movies, they're just right there and you can see it. So anyways, there's my background. First off, just a little background into how women are represented in general. I think that I kind of wanted to look a little bit back, like in the 90s, kind of like how you did. And I think the first one I wanted to bring up was in movies and back then as their roles, they were supposed to be seen as just like, you're supposed to look cute and be very feminine and like just kind of be that like dumb blonde kind of person. And if you weren't a dumb blonde, you were a total nerd. You know what I mean? And I think that like a lot of in media, what you see is the ditzy girl that's just like, I just want the football player and I don't know what's going on and
especially when it comes to horror movies.
Yes. And I think that stems from like 90s movies. So like in the 90s we had like Hot Chick, right, which was basically like this girl, she switches bodies with this man and it's all about how because she's a woman and she's like dumb and blonde, he uses that to like get all of these advantages. They make it seem like a big like, wow, women empowerment because she can do this. And it's really not. It's this man taking advantage of her. Also in Clueless, like the way that the main girl acts in Clueless, I think that's like a good basis for how women are represented in these movies. So think of her. Think of that.
I also, not want to interrupt.
Go ahead, girl.
But when I think of 90s, I believe this movie came out in the 90s. I could be completely wrong. But Heathers.
Yes, please.
Think about it in the sense of there's 3 Heathers. They're all the same person, basically. One of them's the big main Heather,
Yeah.
and then the other ones take over after main Heather dies.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes down to it where, what's the main character's name? What is it?
Oh, Veronica.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So when it comes down to it, when Veronica and, what's his name? It's like CJ or something like that. I feel like it's JC.
I think it's JC.
Okay, we'll just say it's JC.
We'll pretend.
Yeah.
The bomber guy.
Yeah. But like when it comes down to it, where Veronica and JC then accidentally kill Heather. Well, not accidentally. JC knew what he was doing. But she then went into the like stupid girl trope and like, I don't know what to do. And JC's like, this is how you do it. I think throughout the movie, it gets to a point where right at the end when JC's about to bomb everyone and kill himself, Veronica has this whole monologue where she's like, bye.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I can't do it anymore.
Yep.
Like, I'm not. And that showed some mental stability. But, like, at the same point, we have to think about it in the sense of, like, again, the 90s were that long ago. And, oh, my God, why did she not leave him right after the first murder?
That's what I'm saying. Because
she faked her death.
Yes. Yes, to get away from him.
Yes.
That's my whole thing, is I think that in that movie, it was, like, they couldn't figure out if they wanted her to be a strong character or not.
Yeah.
Because it was like, she's different than the main stupid girls, like whatever the popular girls. So it was like she was smart in that sense because she wasn't following trends and whatever. But then as soon as it came to this man, they were like, man in charge.
Yeah.
That one was like, okay, completely changed herself and like followed whatever he did, committed murder.
Yeah.
After strung along for so long. And then he was like, I'm going to bomb the school. Pretends to kill herself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To get away from him because she has no other option.
Yeah.
How is that a good representation of women's autonomy? Actually, referring back in the olden days,
Yeah.
sure. I want to start off with like kind of, these are going to be some bad representation and then we'll get to the good ones. But our first one I want to talk about is The Shining. The Shining was probably one of the first ever horror movies out there that really like, first off, it has horrible examples because she literally runs around the whole movie being like, oh my God, what do I do? And running in slow motion.
Yeah.
And just being like, you're scaring me.
Yeah. Not like gonna leave because her son had bruises.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I just feel like motherly instinct
that's
should have came in. But
staying with him when he was being crazy.
Yeah.
Like leaving her kid at one point.
Not realizing he went insane until looking at the piece of paper that he has been writing this whole time.
Yes.
Saying the same sentence over. Why was that the first indicator?
But that's my thing, is in those movies, right, they are basically just brain off, I'm just here to be the side piece. And the fact that she didn't realize that sooner or try to get help and whatever, and I understand they were like in a storm in the middle of the woods and whatever, we get it, we live here, but not using her, like, you have a whole hotel at your disposal.
Yeah.
And you can't figure out how to safely get away from your husband or realize what is going on.
Locking him into the freezer and then thinking, I'm good.
Because I'm pretty sure in that scene, did she not? She just stayed there.
She stayed there for a little bit. Yeah. I think she talked to him. And it's, again, when it comes down to it, why are women, there's nothing there. Yeah. When it comes to some of these movies. I know it's more for the fact where, like, then the audience member will be like, oh my God, run. Like, oh, what are you literally doing?
Sure.
It happens so many times
Yep.
to women where it will be like, but Sarah, don't leave. And it's like manipulation.
Yes.
But also, why are they so stupid to be manipulated that much?
That's what I'm saying. Well, and on another end of that, because I think that, like, that is a good representation of, like, girl brain gone in movie.
Just bye.
You know? But I also think that when it comes to, like, at the end, right, the reason I wanted to bring this one up specifically is because it's the first one where, like, the women actually, like, lives at the end. Like, her and her kid are alive at the end of the movie. Which normally, obviously, like, that brings up the final girl trope.
And the bad guy dies.
However, it's not because they were outsmarted or because she used her body to, like, kill him.
The kid actually thought of it.
The kid who is a boy is the one who thought of it. The mom was just dangling around like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, wasn't she trying to get the snow plow?
Yes.
While all that was happening, while her son was being chased by a crazed man in a maze?
Yeah. And the thing is the kid kind of outsmarted him with, like, getting him lost in the maze.
Yeah.
Sure. But it wasn't because of anything that the mom did to protect the child or herself. It was literally because of natural causes.
Yeah.
Actually, that kind of reminds me of a quote that I found from, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce her name, so I'm going to give it my best shot.
Yeah.
But if not, I'll have it in the link below. Majdalan Al-Mawaka. They said that her survival does not come with the help of her intelligence and capabilities as it does with the help of a man. And I think that that is a really, really good, just overall encapsulating quote of how the horror industry is, especially how it was like about 10 years ago. I think that's like a big, big indicator of how they are. I think another one that is really good is Scream is a really good representation about how kind of extending from how hers was, where in Scream, the girl, you know, you see in the first clip in the opening where
Drew Barrymore.
Yes, Drew Barrymore is on the phone. She's joking around with the person that's like,
she doesn't think he's real.
Yeah, she thinks it's someone playing a prank on her.
And her boyfriend's literally dead, like hung by a tree or something like that. Like it was like something insane.
Yeah, and then like doesn't realize until literally the guy's like, isn't he like in her house or right outside of her house?
Yeah, he's like, I'm watching you. And then she looks outside, doesn't lock doors.
Yeah.
But it comes down to the new Scream movie.
Yeah.
They did the exact same like thing. He's like texting her. It might not be the newest, but like one of the new ones.
Jenna Ortega?
Yeah, Jenna Ortega.
Queen.
Love was locking doors.
Yes.
But it was like from her phone and stuff like that. And like it kept on unlocking. And kind of like she had the mental stability to be able to fight that. And I think that Scream has made somewhat of a redemption because she is the main character now. Also makes me think of, oh my God, what was I just thinking of? Oh, Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes. Oh, Jamie Lee Curtis. I love her. And she's actually a great, great example of the final girl and the Scream Queen trope. Because I think like for Jamie Lee Curtis, she's been in the horror industry for so long that she's gone through all of those roles where she started off as the final girl trope where basically a woman on screen who's kind of like the main character, but not really. She's like a side character to the main character, depending on what variation of horror movie you're watching.
Yeah.
But the main aspects of that character is they're supposed to be like pure of heart and they're usually a virgin, but they're supposed to be very like meek and like pure and like innocent. Like they're very, very innocent.
They can't just like win.
No.
Yeah, there has to be something.
And they always have some man that is either their love interest or trying to save them or whatever. I think that she's a really, really good example of that because I think what was hers? She was in Halloween?
Yeah, she was in Halloween.
I think in Halloween kind of shows her starting off like that. And there was another horror movie she was in where it was kind of like that too.
I'm pretty sure the last one I'm pretty sure this one she wins.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to get to is I feel like now the more current ones, especially she was literally in a show called Scream Queens. And that one is kind of what started that name.
Yeah.
Where it took Final Girl and basically flipped it to where it was supposed to be more empowering towards women, where it's like she was the last survivor and she did it all herself and she came up with the plan and like actually finally giving credit to that final girl, even if they needed help or not. And I think Jamie Lee Curtis is a great example of that change. A lot of the time in horror movies, women are killed off in very like fantasized sexual ways because of that trope where they're supposed to be super innocent. What movie is it? Nightmare on Elm Street.
I could be fully wrong. So tell me if I am. Actually, I have no idea if it is Freddy Krueger or not. But it's a woman in a bathtub. Like a hand or something like that comes out and it literally like kills her. When you talk about women's representation in horror movies, that's the only thing I can think of. I don't know what movie it's from, but he has like blades or something.
Oh, on his fingers. Yeah. Yeah, so it's that one.
Okay. It's like between her legs and that's like how it's framed.
That's exactly what I mean is like it's very, very sexual in nature when how they're like killing them. One of the main unspoken rules of horror movies is if you want to survive in a horror movie, you need to be a virgin.
Yes.
And so it's basically like if you are unpure, you're not living through the movie. But that's the thing is like, so for that, like the way that she was being killed was very sexualized. The first ever like famous scene of a woman being murdered was in American Psycho, where she's in the shower, she's singing, and then he comes in. Yeah. I think ever since that started, that's kind of what started that trope. I'll bring up this movie later when we talk a little bit more about redemption arcs, but Jennifer's Body, that one is a cult classic movie, very misunderstood at the time, but I think the marketing around that movie is a really, really great example of how women are seen in these movies. Because did you hear about all the drama, like what happened when that movie first came out?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. When that movie first came out, you know how they do like test shows where they show like specific audiences for reactions before they release it?
Yeah.
So they did one. This movie was supposed to be like a horror comedy for women, but it was marketed to only men because the studio thought they would get more money because Megan Fox was in it. They showed like a little bit of what the trailer was going to be, and it's basically just like a role of Jennifer being hot, and that's it. And Jennifer is Megan Fox in the movie.
Yeah.
The director of the movie was basically like, hey, this doesn't represent at all what this movie is about. It's just basically showing how great she looks. Can we change it up a bit? She got an email response, Megan Fox hot, and that was it. And they released the trailer.
That's insane.
That's it. And so that movie completely flopped because everyone went to the movie theater thinking they were going to see her boobs because that's what it shows in the trailer. And they were like, what is this movie? It doesn't make any sense, like blah, blah, blah. Because they thought it was supposed to be like a...
Did women end up liking it?
Yes. So like 10 years later, like way later, people who liked horror movies and stuff like that finally found that movie again. And now it's a huge cult classic. But basically what happens is they go to a bar, they go to this concert for this band that's coming. And the band is... Basically, they want to sacrifice someone to be famous. So So they're looking for a virgin at the bar. Megan Fox realizes that they are looking for a virgin, so she pretends to be one because she thinks that's what they're into, and she wants to talk to them.
Groupie.
So, yeah, literally. Us to Elton Dan. Like,
yes.
I don't.
Yeah. Same thing.
I'd be like, hey.
Hey.
She lies, says that she's a virgin. Well, then they burn the bar down, and then they grab Megan Fox. And Needy, her friend, watches her basically get kidnapped and doesn't do anything, which I think that's the first sign of brain off horror movie.
Damn. Just like does not care.
Well, she was just like, where are you going? What are you doing? And she was like, I got it. And then didn't like get any information about the van, call the cops. Anything.
Yeah, no, coming from a person that has a friend that likes to run off sometimes. No, a friend. We don't know which friend. No.
You can say it.
I watch my friend Maddie Warren like a hawk when we're at the bar. Me and our friend Riley make sure Maddie's always in our vision line. But it also just comes with being like a normal human being.
Yeah.
So the fact that she just was like, LOL.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When Jennifer gets taken, they don't really show what happens initially. They show it later. But basically what happened was they sing this little song, whatever, for her, and then they start a ritual, sacrifice her. But the way that they do it was very, very, like, very sexual, but also mocking towards women because it was like they were singing a song making fun of her and stab her in, like, the boob
boobs.
area.
Not on the boobs.
Yeah. Why would you do that? Don't leave the moneymakers alone.
Stab anywhere else.
Anywhere else. It's just so brutal the way that they like kill women compared to men in this, especially like in this movie. Hers is so incredibly graphic, and it's supposed to be an allegory for like sexual assault and things like that.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to the men being killed, they cut away and they don't show any of the graphic stuff.
That's crazy.
You know, because then after that, Megan turns into like a demon and she starts like basically killing guys and only eating guys. But even
feminist.
That's what I'm saying.
No, just kidding.
That's part of the reclaim section, and she starts taking her empowerment and killing the men. Rightfully so. No, that's not actually what the redemption section's about, but that's what she does. But the thing that I noticed is all of the men's deaths were not super graphic and not shown in that same light. They weren't sexual or anything like that. But everything was sexual when it came to the women in that.
Yeah.
But I do think Needy, we can either talk about it now or later, but Needy, genius in that movie. She figured that shit out.
Okay, but let her friend go in the first place.
Well, you know what? She started out
dumb. She had a slow moment.
Yeah, she had a moment where she wasn't exactly super bright. Okay. And it happens. But then, then Megan was like,
I'm literally
gonna eat your boyfriend.
Oh.
And she was like, no.
But, okay, let's back it up. So it took her almost losing her love of her life.
Well, okay, no,
guys,
there's more to it. No,
I'm gonna eat your boyfriend. Oh, what?
Hold
Are
on.
you okay?
No, here's the thing. She had suspicions and things like that for a while. She was creating a plan to be like, Megan, literally stop. Or Jennifer, I keep using Megan's name.
It's okay.
But Jennifer, stop eating boys. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's
she's
just
like,
mm-hmm.
I feel like a god. I'm going to keep eating boys. Anyways, because she's literally a demon. But, sorry, I'm in love with this movie.
You're like, yeah!
I love this movie. But then, all these things start happening. All these deaths start happening in town. So Amanda Seyfried's character is like, you need to stop. And she's like, it's fine. Also, Megan Fox, her character, Jennifer, by icon. If we want to, next episode, we'll talk about LGBT representation because that was my first ever representation of like, I go both ways. But it's in every movie. You see how like we've had so many different movies we brought up that aren't on our list that we originally made. And there's so many examples of it.
But it's also not just horror movies.
Yes. It happens in a lot of
everything. But horror movies is probably, I would say, one of the worst of the worst when it comes down to the tropes.
I think so, especially tropes and stereotypes. And I think that's because, like, obviously in horror movies, it's the main focus is survival. And I think society has seen women as, like, they're not their surviving kind. They're like, stay at home and you get to cook dinner and blah, blah, blah. Okay, guys, we did change our clothes. We had to go take a little brain break, go to class, student things. But we are back here today. We're going to talk about our final thoughts and our conclusion for the day, and we're going to start off with our reclaim section on how people are trying to reclaim their titles and the way women are represented. So go off, Hannah.
Like Maddie said, we just want to give some better examples of what we have been like kind of shaming this whole time, how Hollywood has improved a little bit, but again, they're just not fully great. But for my topic, women's bodies, I immediately thought of the movie and book Dumplin'. It is basically about this girl that her mom's a beauty pageant like queen. She's a little bit bigger, and her whole life it's been her mom being like, oh, I used to be this, like, I'm perfect, like, and she never got that, like, experience because she's been a little bit bigger. So when it comes down to it, she ends up starting to work at, like, a fast food restaurant or something like that. And someone tells her that she should go try out for this beauty pageant. And she goes, I don't have the body type for it, all this stuff. In the end of the movie, she ends up finding confidence from actually, like, drag queens and stuff. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. It's a really good, like, feel-good movie. Yeah. And I think it took the representation of females' bodies in the right direction, strictly just because it wasn't her changing. She stayed in the same body the whole movie and was able to win and be rewarded in the body that she is in. That was a great wrap up of women's bodies, and I'm so excited to see what you have for yours.
Yes. Okay, so for mine, I have a few little clips here. I'm going to try and keep it short just because we went off in the middle section. Yeah. So for the women's mind and ability, the three movies I kind of wanted to touch on, there's a movie called Final Girl, which I was just like, oh my god, the Final Girl trope. Anyways, that movie is basically about this girl getting hunted by these boys. I thought that it was going to be another traditional stereotypical, she's like, wham, the victim, and has to run around and whatever. Well, they throw her in the forest, and she actually has been trained as, like, a secret assassin. So she ends up killing all the boys and winning in the end. And that's simply because she was professionally trained beforehand. So I think for ability-wise, I just wanted to throw that one in there.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that came out in, like, 2014, which I was really surprised that it was, like, that much, not necessarily older, but older than some of the other content we talked about.
Yeah, 1000%.
There's that little guy. Throw that one in there for funsies. But the main ones I want to talk about are, first off, Ready or Not. I don't know if you've seen this movie, but I love it. I think it's hilarious. I think it's a really good horror movie. It's basically about this woman who gets married. The family that she gets married into have this weird, like, ritual that they do, I think every year or every time there's, like, a wedding ceremony.
Interesting. Okay.
For, like, the first bride. You have to survive the night playing some kind of a children's game in the house after your wedding. But it's like a murderous game. So if you get caught, you die, basically. So Ready or Not is kind of like a really intense hide and seek.
Yeah.
And the reason that I chose this one is because I think it really, really shows, like, the first, maybe not the first necessarily, but, like, one of the first prominent modern movies that shows her using her smarts and using her ability and ideas to overcome, like, either being physically injured or having to injure herself to get out of something, and using her mind and ability with her relationships and using her smarts to manipulate the people around her to get out of that situation. And in the end, spoiler alert, she ends up killing the whole family.
Wow.
Indirectly, obviously. So there's like a tie in the spell or whatever it is. So it's basically when the sun comes up, they all like explode.
Interesting.
Sounds a little goofy.
Yeah.
It is
but
a little goofy. It's her at the end where everyone's passed and she is just so mentally exhausted from, you know, making it out alive that she is just literally, she just sits on the porch and waits for the cops to show up. And I think that was a great way to show, like, she beat everyone, she did what she could, and she put her all into it, and now it's, like, just time for repercussions.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting in the fact that they didn't just let her, like, win and she smiles at the end.
Yes.
It's more of she has to now process it and things like that, so she does sit down and she waits because, honestly, that's what any other human being would do in that situation. So
yeah, well, and I definitely another part that I really like about it is that it's not like a black or white of if she's weak or if she's like super overpowered and strong. It's more of a mix of like she has her moments where you can see that like she didn't know she was going into this, she wasn't prepared, and like whatever. And then it also shows, like, okay, she built her mind up. She's ready. She has to go. And I think that I like that duality. I think it's more realistic.
Yeah.
And I think I don't see that in a lot of movies, to be honest. So, and then the last one that I want to talk about is the most recent movie that came out that I think has a good representation of women's mind and how to use their minds to overcome things. It's called The Menu. I don't know if you've seen it. But
no, I have not.
Okay, so The Menu, basically it's supposed to be a social commentary on like high-end restaurants and how basically they're more focused on looks and the experience of like feeling fancy and fine dining. So they, you know, bring out these little portions that are tiny and like you can't eat them and they're hundreds of dollars. But the one that's like weird with his is, you know how there's like some high-end restaurants do like little tricks or like shows during dinner. So theirs are more like deadly. So they like light this guy on fire for one of them and then they like just do weird stuff basically. But at the end of the day, people eating the meal become the next like recipe basically. Like they use them for that. The girl in the movie is shown as like not being taken seriously by her boyfriend and like being talked over, made to be an asshole because she doesn't appreciate the process of this restaurant and like what it has to offer and whatever. So the boyfriend keeps getting really mad at her. But then as she goes along, because she's not completely swooned over this guy and over the restaurant, she finds all these clues and is actually like paying attention. And when the guy mentions that like he's literally gonna kill them, she confronts the chef. She says like certain lines that you can tell get under his skin and really like get into his brain because of all the clues that she's found. Like she found like a thing that he won a burger competition and stuff like that. And she uses that information to basically challenge the chef. Cook something for her because of this challenge and because he's so impressed by the fact that she challenged him and made him fall in love with cooking again, he lets her go. And I think that shows a really, really good example of women using their mind to get out of a situation rather than mind and body and stuff like that. I think that's one of the only examples I've seen in horror media that like actually shows just the mind. So
for having that control and power.
Yes, exactly. Especially when it shows adverse of not being taken seriously to she's the only one that made it out alive. So I really liked the way that they flipped that.
Because like even from what you've said describing the movie, I think it's great premise. Like I said before, the power that she gains from it, you can really see the emotion on his face, and when he knows that she means business.
Definitely.
And it comes down to it where when she does say, I just want a cheeseburger, just kind of something like she's definitely thought about this. It wasn't like that elaborate of a meal, just kind of stuff like that.
Okay, so now that we have our little examples, right, I kind of want to talk about, do we think these work? Do we think that the redemption arc is working? And I think that'll be a nice little round out for our last thoughts.
I would say from an overall perspective, like we have said, like towards the middle of this podcast, traditional media will never change.
Yes.
There might be some points where a movie will stand out or something like that, but traditional media, even if it comes from a female director, which is so sad to say, it probably will still have stereotypes. And that's just my opinion on it, especially with like stuff like Don't Worry Darling that came out that was supposed to be this feminist like manifesto, and then it ended up being a lot more for the male gaze. It just wasn't what the movie should have been.
Definitely.
So I think in a sense there will never be a time where I would say all of traditional media has developed to a point where female characters feel fully rounded.
I agree. I think that, especially when you're just looking at traditional media aspect, I feel like that one's very, very hard to get fully correct. I feel like you're trying to please so many people that a lot of people, because you're trying to please them, will ignore the feelings of the people that are being excluded to get that click or the view or whatever it may be, or send a message or be funny. So I definitely agree. I think that is going to be something that will never fully be satisfied. I think we're a little bit closer in social media terms.
Yes. I would say digital media has fully changed. Even when
yes.
it comes to like streaming and stuff like that, there are shows that are a little bit better, but then there's also shows like we showcased. They're not fully developed.
Right, where they attempt to be and they almost inadvertently do worse than what they are trying to get away from.
Yes.
I definitely think that's where we are now, and I think that's going to basically be how it is for a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was great talking to you today. And I love that we got to discuss all this.
Yes. I can't wait for our next episode. We can talk about so many different topics. Write down below what you guys want us to talk about.
Yes.
Maybe we can do men representation, have some guests on, something like that. But
yeah.
we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.